Get in here. It's those silver buggers again.
Hello and welcome. Yes, we are the Whovians, and we have gathered here once again, this time to talk about Tomb of the Cybermen. Yes, with Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, and let's see what Lee has to say about this. Go ahead, Lee.
Classic, as everybody keeps calling it, Lost until 1992. I like this one because Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines in this, you can see they just working together, and they've become a sort of a double act. It's like as if they know what they're going to do, what each other's are thinking, and that when the one and so Victoria's first trip in the TARDIS, it's one of a great performance. She's a little girl. She's lost her father. She's found the Doctor. He's took her under her wing. It's a great performance between the Doctor and Victoria. That little scene there where they're talking about family, and it's always in his back of his head. He always has to think about the family. Brilliant writing. For me, we're the best in the TV series. It's just the way they were portrayed, the voices, and even the design of them. This for me does go down in history. So for me, it's 10.
10 already. Thank you, Lee.
10 already. 10 already.
Yeah, 10 already. That was quick. Let's see if it's another 10. Let's see what Alistair has to think. Is it another 10?
I generally give it a good rating as long as the design is good, the overall plot is good, and more importantly, if I'm entertained. And honestly, I was entertained. So I gotta say, other than some kind of obvious typecasting for the time, it was pretty damn good. It was good. Honestly, at first I was a little bit hesitant getting into it because I gotta admit, I haven't enjoyed a lot of the modern Cybermen stories. So I wasn't sure if the old ones would be better or just kind of on the same level. I'll admit, I feel like, especially because I know more of the modern than the old, it's to the point, at least in the last couple of seasons, where Cybermen, the Daleks, they pull them out every chance they get. So, and while the first couple times it came out, it was really witty and good, after you see them every other week, it gets a little bit old. But I can see definitely why a lot of people like this. It was just kind of interesting to see how they had planned to survive. They were no, we knew you humans would be inquisitive. We knew you couldn't help but come and find us because there was a legend that we all disappeared. We were dying out, but we knew if we just suddenly mysteriously disappeared, sooner or later humans would come, and then we'd have more material to build more Cybermen and get harness more energy, because I can't remember exactly what their thing on the moon wasn't exactly working, or they weren't able to get the energy they needed. And even the leader of the Cybermen needed the Doctor's help to get all powered up again because he couldn't fight off, what's his name, Klieg. On the other hand, I gotta say, I feel like the villains, and it is definitely something that's just it is a running theme with the Cybermen, because the Cybermen thing is whole, we are cold and logical, we are beyond human emotion, we don't need any of that. So when they put the humans who want to work with them in comparison, despite claiming that they are also for logic, they come off as very, I don't know how to say it other than they just seem very, they don't go with what they make choices that don't go with what they say they are. They'll just make rash decisions and spur of the moment decisions, and maybe that's just human nature, that don't make a lot of sense, even though they say that they have planned ahead for all these years searching for the Cybermen. When actually faced with it, they have no idea what they're getting into. They think they can just bully their way into it, and I didn't very much like that. Then again, it's kind of common when you're faced human versus machine. There's really not much other way to put it. I like Jamie a lot, I'll be honest. He's interesting to me. He's just kind of a simple guy, but I just enjoyed his kind of like the banter he had and how he inserted himself into the situation. I really like the second Doctor a lot. And I guess I would say overall I was very entertained by the episode. It had a few faults here and there, but it was good, especially for, like Lee said, 1967. That when you think of stuff from that era, it's a lot campier. It's a lot more not as well put together. They were just coming together, getting the idea of televised series out. I enjoyed it. So I'll give it a 9. It wasn't perfect, but I really did enjoy it. So I can only rate it highly.
A 9 from Alistair. Thank you, Alistair. Now we go to the person who's always sat in the dark. He does have a light switch, but he likes to save energy. It's the one and only Connor. Go ahead, Connor.
I'm not quite sure about this story. I don't think it's a classic as people rate it to be. I don't think it's quite of that caliber, but it's a good story. I think the main cast, Patrick Troughton, Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling were the best of the entire story. I don't think the guest cast were really that great. I just didn't feel like the writing was sort of strong for them, and it really took me out of the story at times. I do wish that the Cybermen had a bit more to do in the story, but I thought that they were really good. I like their design. As Lee said, I think the 60s Cybermen is far superior to anything that came after that. Although their voices were rather weird, at times almost inaudible, where I couldn't understand the word they were saying. It sounded like they had a major nasal infection, but I mean, what can you do at that time? Yeah, as I said, the story was good. At times it got a bit lost, but I think they sort of managed to make a pretty comprehensible story out of it. There were a few particular scenes that I found to be quite stupid, actually. One where the guy was throwing grenades at the Cybermen and they were just running all over the place. And then when Cybermen came in and threw the cyber controller, lifted him up in the air and then threw him against the controls, I thought that took me out of the story a bit. I thought that was just a bit stupid for the story. But overall, I think it was a rather good, solid story, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
A 7 out of 10 from Connor. Thank you, Connor. Now let's go over to our very own Cyberman Destroyer. Yes, Jason. Go ahead, Jason.
I definitely love this story. Definitely one of the best Patrick Troughton stories of Tomb of the Cybermen. The 37th story back from 1967, and this story I definitely quite enjoyed. Definitely great companions like Victoria, Jamie. Got some great villains in this story like Eric Cleve and also Captain, I think that's what her name is. I mean, definitely great performance by them. There's also 4 actors in this story that were in more than one Doctor Who that appeared in future Doctor Who stories. There was another actor that actually appeared later on from Star Wars New Hope as one of the Empire. Yeah, definitely great story with the Cyberman. I love the classics with the Cyberman version, more better than the new version that we have now. You also got this fact that they got the Cybermats. They had some kind of hypnotizing machine in a bit when you had that scene with that one guy with Jamie, or Jamie getting a bit hypnotized on that machine over there, having the bit tricked us a bit to the point where there was a Cyberman coming up right in the end of the episode, and there was a gun behind the guy and ends up killing him, which the Doctor ended up figuring out. I had no problem at all with this story. Yeah, I definitely give it a 10 out of 10.
Another 10. Yes, we've had 2 10s already from Lee and from Jason. So now let's go over to Lady Neo. Let's see what Lady Neo has to think about Tomb of the Cybermen.
Everybody has given, their nice, good points about it, especially the part with the second Doctor and Victoria and how they were, that nice tender moment they had in I think it was part 3, when everybody was asleep and everything. I thought that was very adorable. And, the part I loved the most was, yes, this was her first adventure. She willingly went out of the TARDIS with Jamie and the Doctor. But the moment they tried to get her to go in the temple, I think it was a temple, they were able to, no, the tomb, she would not go, and they had to coax her in. And that was so adorable. That's a good TARDIS team. And I know Victoria screams. She screams a lot. But in this one, I think she only screamed, and I was counting, this is how bad it was. I think she only screamed about 5 to 6 times in this one, which was not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, she doesn't scream as bad as Mel. We'll worry about that later. But overall, it was a good story. The music was very good, especially the scene with the Cybermen, the awakening of the Cybermen out of their little plastic tomb thingies. That was great. I mean, it did take a little long, and it was dragging in that part, but the music really made it worthwhile. Let's see, the cyber suits, if I had to compare the Cybermen suits to the more recent modern day Iron Man wannabe Cyberman suits, I would pick these ones over that. And also the Cybermats, that little cute creature that they had that looked more like, I don't know, what do you call it, some kind of, not a snail, but a big giant snail, I don't know. But if I compared the one from that one to the more recent one, I would like that one. I would like I'm saying this wrong. I like the ones from the Ark in Space much better. The Cybermats from there. I like those better than the Cybermats in this one, but this is a close second. The more modern one looks ridiculous. I think it was the captain that sounded American. He gave Victoria her nickname Vic. That was good. Overall, I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I would watch it again, and I might watch the special edition next time just to see that maybe if I missed anything, So 9 out of 10.
A 9 from Neo. And can I just say, nobody screams as much as Mel. So now it's Jimmy. Go ahead, Jimmy.
As Lee pointed out, the relationship between Jamie and the Doctor is fantastic. This is the type of companion the Doctor should have. But it wasn't just them on screen. They were working on it off stage. For instance, they worked out in secret without the knowledge of the director, Morris Barry. That sequence where the Doctor and Jamie go to take Victoria by hand and they end up taking up each other's hand. They did that in the knowledge that because of their schedule and the likelihood that there would be no retakes, they have to leave it in as it is. So their chemistry together they were working on it off stage and then off camera and then working on camera, and it really works. Jamie is a terrific companion. In this episode influenced Matt Smith. When Matt Smith learned he got the role and he was preparing for the role of the Doctor, this was the episode he watched. And he loved it so much he wore the bow tie because of Patrick Troughton. It's called a classic. It's from the classic area, but is it really a classic? And if you look at it from the point of view of where we are now, the 21st century with 50 plus years of Doctor Who, I would have to say no. But if you look at it back then, why it was made, the problem is the script writers. It's full of racism. It's full of sexism. There are things in there that don't make any sense. For example, the tomb itself. Why did the Cybermen put themselves in storage for all those years? Why does everyone know where to find them? And why, knowing who the Cybermen are, do you want to go get them? Just, well, they have power. Also, the motivations. The doctor tells them how to open up the doors and how to do this and how to do that. And then he says, oh, but I wouldn't do it if I were you. And of course they do it. Now, from our point of view, we might think of the Seventh Doctor and saying that the Doctor was doing this to be manipulative and he was just playing with the people. But this isn't the Seventh Doctor, this is the Second Doctor. And it very well may be that the script writers just didn't even think of the motivations of the characters and why they just needed to get the door open. Because back then, when they were writing, to them, this was just a kiddie show. That's all. They didn't have to go through these explanations and explain motivations. So it's very hard for me to rate. For back then, I would say the episodes all together, all parts together, would be very close to a 10. But now, look, I can only give it a 6.
Thank you, Jimmy. See, we have a wide-ranging opinions on this show. We don't all think the same, you know. And that's what's great about being part of the Whovians, you know, being part of this group. We all have different opinions, you know, even on classic stories, what people consider to be real classics. Now, he's the man with the books. Yes, you know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. He's our very own librarian. It's Harry. Go ahead, Harry.
Thank you, Alan. For me, I remember back in the 90s when Tomb was recovered in Hong Kong. I remember the thrill, this uproar in the community, because at that time, there was no Doctor Who on the air except for episodes that have been aired multiple times. And everybody was saying, this is a classic. This is a classic. Well, I have the book. And I compared the book with what was shown on television, what was shown on DVD. As far as the DVD is concerned, it gives us a lot of insight into things that we normally wouldn't get. But it also opened up, not only in the book, but in the DVD, a couple of cans of worms that have been around with the fans for a long time. I'll get into those cans later, but as far as ratings, the story itself, I give it 10. To me, it's a classic. It is an outright classic. You got such great chemistry between Pat Troughton, Fraser Hines, Deborah Watling. The cast for the story just works oh so well together. The idea of the Cybermen setting up the city, the Tombs way they did, as it's explained, it's a logic trap. Why go out searching for the creme of people in the universe when they hear rumors of this lost tomb? And they will come to you. If they're smart enough to work out the logic, they'll come to you and you have new Cybermen to create. Thus, I give the story a 10. The book, written by Jerry Davis, who's one of the co-creators and co-writers of the story, along with Kit Pedler, who between the two of them created the Cybermen back in the early 60s. In fact, this is the third Cybermen story that we've got. We have the nearly complete with animation 10th Planet. We got the complete with animation story Moonbase. And now we have the complete story without animation, Tomb of the Cybermen. The book I give an 8, nothing against Jerry Davis's writing, but he makes one faux pas several times throughout the book. He calls the Doctor Doctor Who. And that is a big faux pas as far as I'm concerned. Now, as far as other material that you might want to look at, one of the books I would recommend, if you don't have it in your library, I've pulled it before, I've mentioned it before when it comes to Cybermen, David Banks' Cybermen book. whether you get hardback or paperback, get it. It takes you through all the Cybermen stories except for Silver Nemesis from the classic era. It organizes them two different ways. You have one where it's the archivist is looking at it, organizing the stories on how, from a cyber historical point of view, they should be organized, such as the silent invasion with the Attack of the Cybermen, which is in many ways a sequel to Tomb, through 10th Planet, all the way up to the story Tomb of the Cybermen. So I definitely recommend that you get a chance to pick that book up. As far as the other book, when we get into the open discussion, I'll bring that up when I talk about the 2 cans of worms that were opened up in this story. But listen, to me, Tomb is an out-and-out 10. It's a great story. If you haven't already got it in either your book library or your DVD library, get it, because it's well worth adding to it.
Thank you, Harry. Now let's go over to Beefdad.
I remember when this first aired, I didn't have to wait until the 90s for it to be recovered. I remember seeing it. It was the year after I came out of hospital, after I'd had my accident and was in hospital for 6 months. I remember one of the moments that really caught everybody's imagination was the moment where the Cybermen defrosted and got out of the tomb, and everybody said how creepy that was. And even now, it's still creepy. The cyber controller loved him, the man with the brain in a bubble. He was played by Michael Kilgareth, who got the part because he's so enormously tall. He's something like 6'6". Plus, they put him in stack shoes as well. So he was just enormous, but he was rather happy that he didn't have to do any of the dialogue because that was all done by Peter Hawkins. All he had to do was open the mouth when Peter Hawkins started to talk and then shut it. Eric Klieg, nasty man, played by George Pastel, who was on television every 5 minutes during the 60s, and he always played someone with a foreign accent. He was brilliant at his accents. Then Kaftan. I always felt that Kaftan, played by Shirley Cooklin, was a bit of a spare wheel in it. There really wasn't a great deal for her to do. She really didn't contribute a great deal to the story, apart from having the servant Toberman, who finally, well, he doesn't kill the cyber controller, but he certainly knocks him out and then finally kills him at the very end and dies himself in the process. Victoria, nobody quite knew at the time what to make of Victoria. She was an unknown quantity, but this show, this particular one, The Tomb of the Cybermen, really pulled her into it rather beautifully, and she really just assimilated into the TARDIS team, and it was excellent. But apart from anything else, she was a lovely girl. Her sister is Dilys Watling, who was an old drinking buddy of mine, but that's several other stories. All in all, I thought it worked. At the time, everybody loved it. Yeah, there were plot holes in it, but to be perfectly honest, the kids at the time weren't that discerning. They didn't pick it apart like we do now. But there again, an awful lot of people will sit and watch a television program without picking it apart. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, I can only go by what I went at the time. I watched it again yesterday, all the way through, but it just brought back feelings of the time for me. And for that, I'm giving it a 10.
A 10. Thank you, Beefdad. So what do I think? Well, for me, yeah, this is a classic, I have to say. It is. These are the best Cybermen. These are my favorite design of the Cybermen, like Lee has said and a few others have said. I think the Cybermen look their best in this story. And there's also the feel about this story. There's a feel about it, you know, you really feel it, if you know what I mean. One of my favorite scenes in this is where the Doctor and Victoria are talking about family, and the Doctor talks about his family, you know, and it's just brilliantly done. It's just brilliantly done, and it's just a small little scene, really. It's just only a few lines, but it's brilliantly done. And it adds so much. It adds so much, you know. And obviously, this has the classic scene, what you see all the time in clip videos of Doctor Who, where the Cybermen are defrosting, you know, out of their tombs. It's great. But I do have to say one thing. I feel a bit sorry for the cyber leader in this, because when they're defrosting him and they're opening that door thing where he sat at the bottom, I can't help but think, is that a toilet? Because he is sat on it like it's a toilet. So I'm thinking the poor Cyberman's been there for however long, being sat on the toilet. I mean, it could have just been a whole accident all along. He wasn't meant to freeze. He's gone to the toilet. But never mind, we won't go there. It's put me off going to the toilet. But anyway, yeah, I like this. The supporting cast are good. I like, yeah, there are nitpicks, but there's nitpicks with every episode. There's every single episode you can nitpick at. If you want to nitpick, you'll find something, no matter what episode it is. This for me is a classic. I really like it. I don't get bored when watching it. I've watched it several times, you know, over the years, and I like it every single time. I enjoy it every single time. So for me, it just has to be an absolute 10, big 10, yes. So now I'm going to throw the floor open to whoever wants to speak.
The pacing is very good. I admit that. It really moves by fast. You don't get bored. My point was that someone who just got into Doctor Who, or someone in a 21st century Doctor Who, can't look at the episode with 21st century mindset, because then you get all the plot, you have all the questions. As Beefdad said, we tear it apart more than they did back then. Even the way it ended, where the Doctor jury-rigged the tomb so that anyone, even if they accidentally came across the tomb, would be electrocuted and die. That doesn't seem to be in character with the Doctor that we in the 21st century know. But this was, what was it? This was the first of Series 5, wasn't it? It was very, very early in the history of Doctor Who. So it's actually a different Doctor than the one that we now know after all these decades.
But watching this, it really drags me in from the start. I really get the beginning is, I just like it all. It just drags me in from the start, and I want to keep on watching. It's one of those ones where you can just, what I find that you can just watch it all without having, you know, sometimes with Doctor Who, you know, you watch one episode and then you'll watch the next episode the next day. But for me, you can watch this one as an entire. I could watch this as a film. If it wasn't split up, I could watch this all the way through, just like that.
Yeah, it has been said in interviews in the past. The director, Maurice Barry, wasn't very light with the cast and crew. He wasn't very good to work with. If things weren't working on the set, he'd stop everything and move the set. He'd move the set instead of moving the cameras. And it used to put time to the production and everything like that. Apparently he wasn't a very nice man, according to Debbie Watling and Fraser Hahn. The product looks brilliant, so he must have done something right. And also the cyber controller, does come back to fight another day in Attack of the Cybermen, played by the same actor, Michael Kilgrath. And he also played the K-1 robot in Robot. And also do Return to Telos in audios with Tom Baker, called Return to Telos, with Jamie, and the character Hayden, played by Bernard Holly, who copped it in episode, I think it was.
Give you a little bit of history, a memory that came up when I was watching this. I remember when it aired, my parents were both watching Doctor Who at the time with me, and I remember my mother being in the kitchen and my father sitting there watching it and then going, Sylph, get in here. It's those silver buggers again. And that's always stuck in my head. But yeah, my mother came rushing in, sat down, and tea got delayed. But no, it was good fun. And yeah, there's it's one of those ones that actually brings up a memory of my parents, which is nice for me.
I had a couple points I wanted to bring up, Ballard. Point number one, the major can of worms that get opened up in this story. The Doctor's age. In this story, in the very first scene, which was reshot from the end of Evil of the Daleks, Victoria's mentioning that the Doctor seems to be an older man. He mentions he's 450 years old by human terms. That figure has changed a lot over the years. It's gotten now to the point where the Doctor is basically almost 1,000. And it's hard to tell, depending on which incarnation you're talking about, if he's older, he's younger. It's hard to tell anymore what his actual age is. It's like, it's up to each individual writer or each individual actor to determine what the Doctor's actual age is. That's something that, I hate to say it, I love the show, but it's something that bugs not only me, it bugs a lot of other fans as well. Now, as for the minor can of worms, the Doctor mentions he's telling Victoria about how he understands about her missing her father and how much that memory is still in her. He mentioned he keeps the memory of his family in his own mind. Well, that's a minor can of worms that eventually did get settled in the New Adventure book series. I present to you the book by Mark Platt, Lung Barrow. The last of the Sylvester McCoy New Adventure books takes place on Gallifrey, leads into the Doctor Who movie, and explains about the Doctor's family in the house of Lung Barrow. Oh. It's a well-done book. Platt did a very good job of it, really caught it and it up well, brings back in some familiar faces like Leela, both versions of K9, Romana. I think you want to find out, get an idea of what a well-thought-out idea of how Gallifreyans come about, plus it also explains about something that's been hinted about throughout the McCoy era. This book, Lung Barrow, is one I would suggest you sink your teeth into. May have to do better looking to find it, but you're going to be in for a very good book. It's something I would wholeheartedly suggest any fan look into getting, because it really clears up a lot of mysteries involving the Seventh Doctor, as well as the other and stuff about Gallifrey.
Thank you, Harry. Did you have something to say, Alistair?
I know, it's just because going off of what Harry just said, I figured watching the episode the way the Doctor kind of paused before he said that, I figured it was just, well, these humans have no idea how old I am. I could say anything. So it's either well, I'm a lot older and I'm going to take the proverbial Time Lord of 20 years off, like, some people do. Either that or possibly I always figured that the Doctor at some point forgets how old he is because he's not around his people a lot from a certain point onward. So it's like, and when you're traveling through time and space, I feel like that's something you could easily lose track of, because how do you, when you're traveling through time and space, how do you define how many years old you are? If you're 500 years in the past, this is a really weird thing to bring up, but I actually asked a manager where I worked about this once, and they said that if the doctor or anyone else came from the future and came to Walmart and decided to, for example, say he brought someone from the year 3000 who was 40 years old in the year 3000, that person, considering they haven't been born yet, at least from where we're standing, wouldn't be able to buy, at least by Walmart rules, wouldn't be able to buy alcohol or tobacco because they're not 40 yet. So then that kind of made me think about it. Like, when you're someone whose people very much travel through time and space, though it's kind of more of the doctor's thing, how do you define how old you are? Is it by the time you spend in each year and the time you spend in the TARDIS, or is it from when you were born onward? And so the other thing was, and I kind of partially didn't want to talk about it because, well, I mean, it was the 60s. They're going to typecast certain people, and it could be because I am, again, from a more modern viewpoint, and possibly also because, well, I'm Asian.
Communism! Wow.
It's uncomfortable to me how often people, at least it felt like they were typecast, or at least they were playing characters who were Hindi or Indian, are typecast as villains in old stuff. I know it was just kind of the thing to do, and it's not just them, but like the main bad guys were Eric Cleve, his wife, and I cannot pronounce that guy's name for the life of me, but they're strongman, and so
yeah. But it was the era, it was the culture. You know, it's obviously different with TV and that now, but you have to.
They say the past is a different country and they play by different rules. So
it was a different move back then. You know, there's
but also you've got to realise Cybermen saved the day. He may have been the underdog. He saved the day.
Yeah, he was the hero in the end.
He was. Yeah, in the end he was. He gave his life. Also, as well, the Doctor's age. One solution about this is you've got to remember the Doctor lies. And he also can lie about his age.
Well, he said he was 450 in earthly terms. Mm. In Gallifreyan terms, he could be 47.
Exactly.
We don't think about he said in earthly terms. But what didn't make sense to me was she finds out he's a time traveler, and then she said, so that means you must be... No, it don't. It doesn't mean he has to be over 100 years old because he's a time traveler. It just means he's a time traveler. But he does say it's 450 years in earthly terms.
Victoria, the character Victoria, always gets a bit bad stick for being a screamer. I'm sorry, but from 1963 up to the present, Whovians scream. Yeah. You can't just put one of the companion category across the board. They've all screamed at once or twice, few through the seasons. They've all done it. So, Victoria was a companion. It's a shame she left at the end of the season. I think she should have been carried on.
All right then. Well, I'll wrap it up there, and that's your lot for today. Yes, and for a start, I'd like to thank everybody here for joining me as always. I'd like to thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and everything else. You know, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us wherever. And as ever, keep on hooing. You belong.